Donald Trump presidency, we will finally evict all of these illegal aliens that are coming here and stealing jobs from Americans. If you break into my house, should I just accept you because you washed my dishes and made my beds? I say no. I say you need to go back and come back in the right way.
So is that what the Indians should have told white Americans?
Absolutely. Ask Cochise if border control is important.
Because the original illegal alien are European white folk in America.
Agreed.
And so should the Indians stand up today and say deport all white folks back to Europe?
Well, should we learn something from their mistake? Because we are here now.
Or should you learn something from their compassion to give other people an opportunity like was given to you and your ancestors? Learn from their compassion. That's what you should learn from.
I say learn from their mistakes. Ask Geronimo if taking care of your borders is important. And we need to do that now.
And I agree with Cochise, Geronimo, and Sitting Bull. Letting in the white man was the worst mistake that the Indians ever could have made. I agree with you. That was one of the greatest mistakes. Even right there in South Africa, they got a similar problem.
Can we just be honest and admit that the main problem with this whole immigration epidemic that's happening in Canada is you nasty entitled white people? Take a moment and look at my skin. I am in fact white, but do you know how embarrassing it is? I've lived in Vancouver for 3.5 months. Can't even count on my hands how many times I've heard racist remarks from people in public, yelling at people, go back to your country, you don't belong here. First of all, if you want to get really into it, you're not from here, okay? Let's start there. Let's play a little game called take an ancestry test, take a DNA test, because guess what's gonna come back? Oh my God, shocking, you're from Ireland, you're from Scotland, you're from England, you're from Poland, you're not from here, because Canadians don't exist. Canadians are Aboriginals. And also, we took their land many, many years ago. So you are also an immigrant. You came from an immigrant family. I don't care if it's 5 generations ago, 7 generations ago. Your family came here as immigrants one day. And you want to get mad at the people that are doing it in real time? The worst comment that I'm hearing is when you come to Canada, you have to embrace our culture. You have to act Canadian. What does that even mean? You have to eat poutine and beaver tails every day? Like, how about you actually go to their country and you learn something about having culture? Because we have none. My favorite comment that, oh, they come here and they take all of our jobs. They're taking our kids' jobs. Yeah, because your kid's lazy and entitled and he wants to go to work, sit on his little TikTok phone all day, and magically get paid $20 an hour. That's not how it works. These people come here and they're hard workers. So yeah, add 2 and 2 together. It's making sense why they're taking your jobs. The problem does not lie with the people migrating to Canada. The problem lies with the people here acting disgustingly, blatantly racist, rude, and entitled.
So you think foreigners are taking your jobs?
Yes, our jobs and our diplomas, mate.
Why do you think foreign workers are an issue?
They work too fast. Makes the rest of us look lazy. It's not right.
Do you think immigrants are taking the jobs?
I'm not against immigrants. But why should they get work when I've got anxiety?
Why can't you find work, Dave?
Just got out of jail, mate, but they took the jobs while I was inside.
You were offered a job recently, yeah?
Yeah, cleaning job. But it was too early, like 8 a.m. Madness.
Why didn't you apply for the warehouse job, Dean?
I was going to, but it closed at 5 and I didn't wake up till 6.
Would you take a job now if one came up?
I could work, but why should I if someone else already is?
7 interviews today. No one is working, but everyone blames immigration. How did you land this job, Lucas?
Applied online, came in, worked hard.
That's all, really?
How important an issue is immigration to you?
Well, I can't get a job. They come to this country and they just get a job just like that.
So when you apply, what do they say to you?
Well, I've got a criminal record. Assault.
Assault?
Yeah.
How long ago?
Well, I've been out of prison now 3 years now.
And so you blame immigrants rather than your criminal record?
They're taking all our jobs.
What qualifications do you have?
None. They're taking all the qualifications as well.
Hey, and what's up, good people? What's up, beautiful people, ladies and gentlemen, and brothers and sisters? Welcome back to the channel, and it's my hope, as usual, that you're doing fantastic from wherever you're watching this video from. If it's your first time in this channel, welcome as well, and enjoy. So, I have a very interesting video for us right here today. And just in the backdrop of this Trump regime madness of deportation and immigration crisis, I want us to talk about white entitlement and white privilege. Of course, all these two concepts being anchored under white supremacy. Now, unless you live under a rock or you're coming from another planet, then is probably when you can purport that you don't understand that white privilege is a thing, is a real thing. And if you want to know that white privilege is something, is that white supremacists themselves often become defensive, very, very defensive, sometimes even a little bit aggressive when they're confronted with such a subject. In one of the videos I just played for you right there, you can hear Colonel X confronting that white supremacist on whether it was the biggest mistake that the native Indian, the native of the American continent, did the biggest mistake by allowing white people into America and the Americas in the very first place. And you can hear he had the guts to even try to defend and justify why they deserve to be there, but nobody else deserves. That is what white entitlement is, and it is all over. You would probably think, if you're coming from another planet, or if you're just ignorant enough, that white people are actually the natives of the Americas, and America for that matter. If you are not careful, someone would really think, an ignorant person would think they are, with how they speak and how they tell everybody else to leave and how they tell black people to go back to Africa, and you know how they behave around that country, you'd think they are the natives of that land, until you realize they are the biggest and the earliest and the first and the most terrible, horrible immigrants into the Americas. But they tell everybody else to leave, and they're deporting everybody else, even those that are purportedly much more American than them. That is what I want us to talk about here, and I have prepared a series of very interesting videos for us here. Some of them are funny, some of them are annoying, and at most, some of them are even frustrating. I want us to dissect and look into the mind of white supremacy, and right at the end of it, we're going to have something to talk about. So without wasting much more time, let's go for it. If it is your first time into this channel and you like what we do, give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and probably subscribe to this channel. So let's go for this. See you on the other side.
I think there's something so odd about the white supremacist conception of the world, because the white supremacist conception of the world is like colonization was amazing, right? British colonialism was amazing. It was this amazing wonderland. And then when a family moves to Britain or England, they're crying and bitching and moaning. When a migrant family moves to Britain or England, they're crying and bitching and moaning. We're being colonized. We're being colonized. On one hand, the most brutal colonialisms on earth are the worst thing on earth, right? I mean, the best thing on earth, right? They goon over these like horrific empires that murdered millions and made a couple white people rich and impoverished everybody else on the planet. Whatever civilization, quote unquote, they built, like railroads, were made in order to extract as much wealth as possible. They were never made to connect major cities. It was just to get minerals to the export centers, right? It was literally just, the whole project was about exporting as much wealth, leaving millions within famine and death and destruction and rape. But then a migrant moves to England and it's the worst thing. This is colonialism. This is colonial. We are being colonized. And it's like, I wish my, Punjabi ancestors had faced your colonialism, right? Like a nice British family moves into the neighborhood, and works a low minimum wage job. Like, that would have been amazing. That would have been amazing. Between you and me, that would have been amazing. I mean, my great-grandfather was killed by the British. Like his head was rammed in by a gun to death by the British. But, apparently that's the same as, Amir from Afghanistan moving to Britain and working as a lowly paid wage laborer who actually subsidizes the lifestyles of white people, right? Like when migrants move to Europe, they're mostly working low-wage jobs that no European wants to work. And they subsidize these privileged people's lifestyles. And it's so funny to see these privileged people, right? These babies of empire, right? These labor aristocrats. And they are labor aristocrats. They are working class. But they're so protected in a bubble from the effects of their empire, you know. There's this insular ideological protection within the West where these little babies are coddled their whole lives and given the ultimate paradise, right? All this stolen loot from colonialism, all this stolen loot from imperialism through finance monopoly capitalism. And even given subsidized lives through low-wage laborers who fix their cars and make their smoothies and help them with their Pilates classes and take care of their babies, specifically nannies, nannies in France, the migrant nannies of France. And then to see them turn around and bitch and say, I'm being colonized, I'm being colonized, I'm being colonized. If that's colonialism, then I wish we had faced that colonialism, the rest of the world. White supremacy is stupidity, it's hypocrisy, and it's tone deafness. It's the rich kids of the world, the privileged kids of the world, the white working class, that has had everything handed to it since birth, throwing a temper tantrum when it's finally told no, or when something doesn't go its way for once. But other than that, it's a rich, spoiled kid who's been handed everything in life. There's no meritocracy in capitalism, right? The white working class they talk about DEI, or they talk about affirmative action. Whiteness is the world's biggest affirmative action project done through colonialism to unfairly place these people above everybody else. They didn't work hard to do that shit, buddy. They didn't work hard to do that shit. They just stole their way to the top. And now they're little whiny little babies. It's the Israeli mindset. The Israeli mindset, the European mindset, the liberal mindset, they're all the same.
A lot of the people who are coming in, I don't want to be too harsh on them, but they have a completely different set of values, especially when it comes to their laws, than we do in the UK. And they seem to want to impose their way of life from where they are from on us. One thing that's certainly happened is more and more sexual assaults, I think, are becoming apparent. There's also a huge increase in gang violence, and it seems like the police seem scared to counteract this. Police have been open about how they're not within their resources to respond to burglaries, for example. They've openly admitted that. However, they seemingly have huge amounts of resources to go after people who make offensive tweets. The internet could well be over-dramatizing that, but the point is, the internet is only showing what other people are seeing. So even though it might not just be happening in your world, what you see with your eyes is not just what there is to see. There's a lot more to see, and that's what the internet is bringing to light.
South Africa is what, 75% black? Is that correct? 80%? Maybe
Yeah,
20?
that's right.
Right. And so explain to me, post-apartheid, outside of the land ownership, maybe there's a business element. Why is it that once apartheid was removed, why black South Africans were not able to see their material economic net worth go up in the last 20 or 30 years? What do you think there's any, and maybe I don't know enough, are there any cultural inhibitions of a defeatist attitude that has basically, let's say, infected the minds of poor South Africans last 20 years that feel as if they can't accumulate wealth? Do you think that plays a factor?
Yeah, I think what's really infected black South Africans is pretty much going back what we're talking about. Obviously, from the colonial background that I just gave you, and we see a lot of neo-colonialism, you control the supply chains, and you own 72% of agricultural farmland. How do you expect the majority black people to improve their lives and their outcomes when you pretty much control everything?
Enough. And so this is a sloppy but best example I can give. Is that fair? I'll do it. So just grant me some mercy here. What percentage of American land is owned by Asians?
Not sure.
Yeah, less than 3%. They are the richest racial group in America. So maybe land ownership isn't the only thing that matters to get wealthy. Land is basically all owned by white people in America, okay? Yet Asians, Indians are by far the richest group. So why is it that this particular group that happens to own the land and the supply chains, and we've admitted it's very hard to run this land, very hard to run this idea of farming in South Africa, it feels to me, I could be wrong, that it's a group of resentment-driven politics towards a group of people that own land instead of opportunity and empowerment-based politics talking to the black majority about how they could build a better life for themselves instead of taking away other people's stuff. I don't know South African law enough. I don't know if it's a free market-based. I really don't. I'm not just playing cute. But as a general operating principle, it's very bad to build a political movement around taking other people's stuff because you're obsessed with what you don't have instead of the mental energy to create what you want and what you think you deserve. So my postulation, and I'm glad you admitted it, don't say kill the Boers. Bad. We should say that. It has created real deaths and real harm. If I was in charge, which of course I'm not, I would spend all my time not saying kill the Boer, kill the Boer. I would say, my people, get your act together. Let's work harder. Let's prove the Boer wrong. Let's start a business. Let's build families. One is driven in resentment and greed and envy and confiscation, and one is rooted in creation and entrepreneurship and optimism.
There is not a single white British child in 72 schools across England. In 454 schools, white British children make up less than 2% of the student body. White British children are also now a minority in 1 in 4 schools. That is data from the Department of Education reported by The Telegraph today. Tell me this, how does any country expect assimilation, let alone a shared culture, when thousands of children grow up in classrooms where white British identity is the exception, not the norm? Will there be a White History Month to help with these minority children to feel included? Will there be DEI initiatives to give them a leg up? Of course not.
I'm filming a video directly off the back of that last one because inevitably it's going to get a pile on from people calling me a racist for talking about it and actual racists who want to weaponize it. Let's start with British culture or white British culture, because yes, it's a thing. It's not racist to say there is such thing as white British culture. It's been the culture that's been developed by white Anglo-Saxon people mostly, going all the way back hundreds of years, centuries, over 1,000 years ago, and has now formed the British identity we have today. And the reality is over 80% of the people in this country, the vast majority of people in this country, are white and British. Therefore, we have a culture. And what's happened is, with mass immigration, we are losing some of the fabric of that culture. And when we highlight things like 72 schools where there are 0 British kids in them, what do you think the implications are for the kids who are growing up in those areas and going to those schools, not being brought up or around the prevailing culture or the prevailing race of people in that society? They're going to be alienated. What happens when they go to the workforce? They're going to feel completely alien to the vast majority of their co-workers. That's not multiculturalism. That's a new culture forming in place of one that no longer exists. And should we accept that in Britain? No, I don't believe that's right for any country. And it's, again, not racist to say that. Now let's talk about skin colour, because this has got nothing to do with your skin colour. This is about the content of your character and your love for the British culture. Because if you move here, you should be moving here because you love our way of life and you want to integrate in it, not because you want to bring the culture of your country and put it on top of the one that already exists. And that's what's happening in these ghettoized communities, is there's no British culture left, so it's being filled with by the vacuum. And therefore those people over decades are going, why do we need to abide by this culture? Because actually it doesn't even exist here anymore. That is the issue we're trying to highlight. It's got nothing to do with skin colour, and it's got everything to do with culture.
67% of the British public think immigration is too high. The British public is right. There are now around 11 million foreign-born people in the UK, and for too long, immigration numbers have been far too high. Immigration at this level has serious consequences. 48% of social housing in London has a head of household not born in the UK. In the last 10 years, migration has absorbed around about 50% of new housing supply. And some nationalities are exceptionally dependent on social housing. For example, 72% of Somalis live in social housing compared to only 16% of the population more generally. Well, I'll talk a bit in a moment about the record of the last government, but I've already said that for decades, under successive governments, including the last one, but previous ones as well, immigration has been far, far too high. That is a failure by governments over a period of decades, and it is now time to listen to the British people and put this right. Because, Madam Deputy Speaker, high levels of immigration, especially when there is not proper integration, undermines social cohesion. And a nation-state, a society, can't function when you have social fractures. It can't function properly. The nation can't function properly. Society can't function properly when you have fractures in social cohesion. Over in a minute. And in advancing the case that we do have a problem with social cohesion and a lack of integration, I will present some evidence. It's not an assertion. I'll present some evidence in support of that. And let me start with this. The most recent census revealed that a million of our fellow citizens don't speak English at all or properly. In one part of East London, 73% of children do not speak English as their first language. And some nationalities have extremely low rates of economic activity, or very high rates of economic inactivity. So, for example, amongst people born in the Middle East and North Africa, economic inactivity rates are 40%. That is double the rate for people born in the UK. Amongst people born in South and East Asia, the economic inactivity rate is 50% higher than it is for people born in the UK. By contrast, amongst those born in Australia or New Zealand, the economic inactivity rate is only half the level amongst the UK-born population. And I'm afraid to say, when it comes to crime and offending, there are some immigrant groups where levels of criminality are very high. For example, Afghans are 20 times more likely to commit sex offenders than average. People of Congolese origin are 12 times more likely to commit violence, and Algerians are 18 times more likely to commit theft. So these figures, I will give you in just a moment, these figures illustrate that we do have a problem with integration, and that is why we need to get these numbers dramatically down until such time as we can address
the fact that this white man had the audacity to say that the British people weren't immigrants when they came to Australia. This is our land.
It is our land, though. We created Australia. We are Australians. That continent is ours. And the only people who want to tell us that it's stolen land and that it doesn't belong to us are people who want to take it from us. And along that same ulterior motive of wanting to steal the country from us is this argument that we're all immigrants, that the first Australian pioneers who were British and built the country from literally dirt and bush into a first world country, that they are somehow the same as the immigrants who rock up today to our post-industrial aging society, is a non sequitur. The only reason these arguments of it being stolen land and everyone's just immigrants, the reason they are employed is to help to debase and destroy the Australian identity, such as to culturally disarm us so we don't feel like we're actually losing anything, as we are literally losing our country and her national inheritance, which our ancestors bequeathed to us. So Australians need to learn to recognize this threat. When someone tells you something isn't yours, particularly your actual country, they're planning to take it from you.
So Victoria's Premier travelled to India and basically promised to increase Indian migration to her state. So recently, the Labor Party said they were going to cap international student numbers because it's getting out of hand, right? There's like 700,000 international students in Australia. So they're going to introduce a cap on that number. And then the state premier of Victoria went to India to increase Indian migration and basically vowed to fight her own party against their caps. And to do that, she's prepared all these loopholes and exploits to circumvent this federal cap. It's very suspicious. Over the last few months, Australian politicians have cozied up pretty hard to India for reasons that are pretty ambiguous, like in this case for multiculturalism. You know, I think there's always room for corruption in matters like this. The last thing anyone should be doing, especially a state premier, is fighting for more immigration.
Australia pays an Indian migrant nearly $400,000 a year just for him to tell them there's too many white people in the country. So this is Jiri Sivaraman. Here he is asking, why is it there are so few people that look like me? So this bloke left India, moved to Australia, somehow got a top position in our government, now complains there aren't enough Indians. And he's getting paid $385,000 to say that, to say there's too many white people. He says the media, politics, the judiciary are held by white people.
But this is not the only instance of someone high up in Australian government being paid by Australian taxpayers advocating for higher Indian migration. Peter Varghese, who is the head of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, who headed the India Economic Strategy, said we should put more Indians in position of power in corporate and government roles. Mr. Varghese has said, I feel a strong connection to India. India was the birthplace of my parents. He was actually born in Kenya, so he wasn't even born in Australia or India, yet he still advocates for India's interests. So that's two examples in this video of migrants working in the Australian government advocating for the interests of a foreign government under the auspices of multiculturalism. To put it bluntly, I think these guys are threats to national security. I don't think anyone with loyalty to a nation other than Australia should be working inside the Australian government, certainly should not be allowed to call for demographic changes to suit their foreign interests.
Do you think diversity has killed British culture?
I really don't know what traditional British culture is. There isn't really a traditional culture. The traditional culture is based on the rich presenting a way of life. There's been a few people in charge making everyone's life a misery for the last 1,000 years.
Should immigrants embrace British culture?
I think they should do whatever they want. Imagine if you grew up with East Asian cuisine, you're not going to like pie and mash. If we went to India, we're not going to start wearing saris and putting henna tattoos, because then it goes the other way. So it doesn't really matter. I think the main thing is, as long as you don't disrupt anything. The saying embrace British culture is just another way of everything's undefined at the moment. It's like everything they do, all the government policies, everything's undefined. It's just this vague notion of sovereignty. That was the whole Brexit, sovereignty. Close our borders, you know, there's nothing defined. I'm quite a logical person, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Do you think British culture ever existed, or do you think that's more of a myth?
It's a myth. It's the plastic patriots. It's the last refuge of the scoundrels. Because we spent all our lives stealing from other people.
Black folks are not settlers. And the individual who mislabeled them as such cited, "Decolonization is not a metaphor," an article that I've read multiple times during my graduate program. And I'm here to clear a few things up. The authors make it explicitly clear that black folks, the descendants of enslaved Africans, are not settlers. They were forcibly brought to these lands as chattel slaves, violently dislocated from their homeland, commodified, and positioned in this scheme of settler colonialism, not as settlers, but as exploitative and punishable labor. Now, when we engage in these scholarly texts, it's really important to read them in their entirety before we cite them. Mislabeling black folks as settlers is harmful. It erases the profound violence of slavery, racial capitalism, and anti-blackness. It also causes harm to the conversations between black and native communities around solidarity and liberation. And so when you read these texts, do so with great care.
So the bill has hit Governor Abbott's desk and has been signed by Governor Abbott. Basically, the anti-sanctuary city bill has been passed and is now law. And what that bill says is that if local law enforcement or state police view a criminal activity afoot, they make a stop on that state crime, and then they can inquire into the status of an individual's residence. Are they a lawful U.S. citizen? Are they here with a green card? Are they a permanent resident alien? Or are they here illegally without documentation? And if they are here illegally without that documentation, then the feds can get involved and then they can take it from there. I think this is a fantastic law. It is time to start enforcing the laws that are on the books instead of the state and local officials legislating from their own little tiny offices.
It's an awful law because it's nothing more than a legal way for law enforcement to racially profile Mexicans and Hispanics. This law was written into existence by Governor Abbott to specifically go after a said group of demographics here in the state of Texas. Secondly, it is awful that we want to call them illegal immigrants to the point to where if a cop does not do his job according to this law, he can be charged and arrested and the cities can be given a $25,000 fine per day. Well, we'll put a cop in jail for not asking somebody's immigrant status, but we won't put cops in jail for shooting and killing unarmed black people.
That's not true. And
Thirdly,
that's way
I think
too far of a step. Murder is against the law, Cornell.
Yeah, but it's not against the law when you kill black people and you're a cop. See, the problem in America and this state is...
What about the Dallas case where that cop was just charged with murder?
Because there was video to show he was absolutely lying.
So you can't make these broad statements. It's just simply not true.
Often there's video, ma'am, where we are killed by cops and nobody ever goes to jail. Ask Eric Garner's family that. Ask the family right there in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Brother Alton Sterling's family.
But your
they're not
statement
getting
is not
justice. So
correct,
video don't mean nothing for us.
Your
But let's get back
statement's
to the
not
immigrants. I would say to the Hispanic and Mexican community, what you got to do now, hook up with the black community and unite in political power, because if Mexicans and black people unite in Texas, we can control the governor, we can control the lieutenant governor, and we can control politics in Texas, period. I'm saying to the Latino brothers and sisters, don't fight them by yourself. If you hook up with black people and we unite, I'm telling you, we can run Texas and then pass laws to deal with those who hate us.
You're advocating for criminal activity, Cornell. These people are not here lawfully. They need to do what our ancestors did, what many Mexicans have done.
No, wait a minute.
Many, don't interrupt me.
Your ancestors came here illegally. Wasn't nothing legal about your ancestors. They came illegally and they murdered, they raped, they pillaged a whole race of people. This country, Texas, Arizona, and California, belonged to the Mexicans.
Cornell, get back
it was
to the
stole from them.
You
so
tell me to get back to the point.
They came here illegally.
No, you're not being fair to me here. You say stay on topic. I say, okay, we'll stay on topic. And then as soon as we start talking about illegal immigration, you go back to the black issue. Let's stay on topic.
Your ancestors are the master illegal immigrants.
Give me the opportunity to respond in that, you know what, we're all Americans here. And if you are here legally, absolutely, then we need to come together and we need to pass good laws for enforcing the laws.
Well, perhaps the Native Americans should have passed laws against your ancestors.
I want y'all to understand something. White people have the entitlement of being able to follow us around in stores or going and keeping tabs on us before they go and tell the people in management or authority what they think they saw, they think they know what's happening, whatever the case is. The audacity that comes from people, the white people who do this, it comes from slavery. It comes from slavery. Same way we do things that came from slavery, like run when we laugh. There's a reason for that. It's in our DNA because our DNA was altered by the traumatic things we endured. Same way their DNA was altered. During the same time, baby, if it affected us, it affected them. Don't even mistake about it. The reason why they feel entitled to be able to follow us around is because they know the power that they held. It's in their DNA that they had the power to enact on us at any time, like they some damn vigilantes. Because at the time, that's all it took. You didn't have to have no badge. You didn't have to have no law. You didn't have to be anybody from anywhere as long as you was white. You could say that these young gentlemen did anything to anybody, and everyone around you that was white would believe you. You could be following them. You could be stalking them. You could be doing whatever you want to them. And at all times, it was always going to be their fault and never hers. Because she's a white woman. We know historically white women are one of the main reasons why so many people were lynched. Innocent black men, to be specific. And it's still happening to this day. Listen, this could have happened. This could have led to something ridiculous had she not kept on walking and took her nosy behind on somewhere. They feel entitled because it's in their DNA that's still telling them that they are entitled, that they have agency over us, what we do, our bodies, and our business. So remember that the next time a white person follows you around anywhere or tries to assert some sort of dominance over you, black folk, it's because of slavery.
Aggrieved entitlement is the belief that some cis white men have that they are being denied their rightful position of dominance in society and that therefore they are being oppressed. As one of these men, you looked around and saw men like you in charge everywhere, from government, judiciary, business, banking, media, entertainment, academia, religion, and technology. These men shaped the system to support their needs, brought others in like them to follow in their footsteps. But then other different people started participating and even sometimes succeeding, and tried to point out the ways that those systems that were implemented decided we're making it unfair for everybody else. Then a bunch of bad actors came in and told you it was these people's fault. Might have even told you that you're being oppressed. But if that was the case, this is what it would look like. Now, the reason this is so painful is because men are taught by old happy culture that domination leads to happiness. A restriction on your ability to dominate feels like a restriction on your well-being. But these systems were never meant to make you happy. They were meant to use and abuse you, to take a very small percentage of you and turn you into somebody who exploits others to keep the system going. They were meant to cut you off from your wonderful, authentic self, from your relationships with other people, and from the impact that you can make on the world. They were meant to make you feel like you're never ever good enough no matter what you do. It seems like some of you think that this is what we want, but it's not. What I want is a world not based on domination at all, but on connection. I want you to have relationships where you feel supported and cared for, places where you can make a contribution and be celebrated for it, and a space where you can ask for help without feeling ashamed. A world where we can all be happy. And if that's what you want, then you should know that that old system is never going to get us there.
A British-born man who has only lived in South Africa for 20 years has decided that he has the right to come here and tell African people what to do with their land. We don't even need to discuss the intricacies of colonialism. We don't need to get into that for you to understand that it's insane for a British man to come here and tell us what to do with our land because he feels like he is entitled to do so. White South Africans don't have the right to tell African people what to do with our land. You live here because your ancestors committed atrocities to the native populations. There is a huge difference between me and them. So you can't tell me that I'm not from here. We were moving around with no borders for decades, for hundreds of years before y'all came here and imposed your bullshit on us. We will not allow it. It doesn't matter how hard you try to convince us. It doesn't matter what argument you come up with. That British man needs to be deported.
It sucks to be a white American. Now hold on, give me a chance, let me explain. I want you to think of the kind of person who would put on a White Lives Matter sticker on the back of their Ford pickup. Why do they do that? Is it all racism? Well, yeah. But I think it goes a lot deeper than that. White Americans basically have no culture. Not in the same way we see other people. And we white people, we know this inherently, and it scares us. We know we have our regional cultures. Our cities, our sports teams, and families all give us our regional culture, but being white basically means nothing. Or generally, at least nothing positive. White people throughout American history are almost always seen on the side of the oppressors. Not all white people, but most of us. And this sucks to learn. It's even harder to internalize. And it's why white people usually don't accept this, because it makes us feel a deep sense of guilt. I think it's why white people say nonsense like, I can't be racist, I have black friends. Sure, you probably don't see black people as objects, but you're refusing to accept the role our people have had in their oppression. That guilt we feel is our responsibility for the actions of our ancestors. It's why white people refuse to say that black people deserve reparation, because it admits our guilt. But black people deserve reparations. It just makes sense logically. You can sue someone for scratching your car, but black people can't sue the American government for the enslavement of their people. My people are arresting and deporting Mexican families from this country. Think about that. We are telling people that they are not allowed on the land we stole. Let's go a step further. White people stole a sacred land site from the people indigenous to this land and then carved 4 white people's faces on it, most of which were slave owners. I mean, Mount Rushmore is a place that we look at and we're like, oh, cool, giant faces. But to other people, it's a giant form of oppression, and admitting that and coming to terms with that sucks. We suck, dude. My people really and truly suck. Not all of us contributed to this oppression, but we are all a part of it. And this will mostly sound like virtue signaling. It will mostly sound like, look at how rough we are. But there is a reality to admitting this guilt and being honest with it. Because white people are afraid to do this. And we're afraid to admit it because my people are weak. White people are weak. We have power we have given ourselves and put down the cultures that are stronger than us because we know that we're weak. If white Americans were oppressed the same way black, native, or Mexican American people are, we would crack like glass. Our culture and identity as white people is so meaningless that we do everything in our power to keep other people down so that we don't break from having someone else on top. I think that's why you see white Americans championing white pride, not just out of ignorance or racism, but it's because they are scared. They're scared to come to terms with their guilt, scared to admit they're wrong, and terrified to acknowledge that we may have all the societal, economic, and political power, but as a people we are weak. But this isn't the way it has to be forever. I have hope that one day my people will finally take responsibility for what we have done. I hope that we'll collectively accept our role in the oppression of our non-white brothers and sisters and finally take action. And it will take the action of us white folks. It's not just non-white people that have to fight for their rights. It's us too fighting for them because our cross to bear is being born white. Being born with the skin color of the oppressors means that we have to fight to be nothing like them. We're not near that right now. America is in a tumultuous stage where it very much does not feel like white people are acknowledging where they went wrong. But I want to have hope, and I refuse to accept that one day justice won't prevail. Collectively, we can all shed the shadow of oppression and share this place together. And that's the message I want to end with. I want to be hopeful that one day oppression will be something taught in history class, you know, something that we don't have to see ourselves in. That's my hope. Anyway, I want to be optimistic in the end. Anyway, that's it. Thanks.
So I'm going to try to answer this. I have not always been the way that I am. I'm not excited to admit this, and I'm ashamed of it, especially in my early 20s. There's no excuse I can give for why white people feel that they are victims of accurate truths when they are presented. Sure, there's a lot of it that has to do with education, especially in high schools. I went to a super Christian Baptist school, and they didn't teach us anything, like really anything, that happened to people of color in this country. They taught us a lot of inaccuracies, and they really made it sound like Black people were unjustly victimizing themselves. But after I graduated, taking that with me, I don't know how to explain it in a way that makes sense, other than it's really just white entitlement to feel like they're right, because that's what I felt when I was 21, 22. And mind you, I was like left of center as far as my political views went. Like, even those people can still be racist and have ideas with insane racist undertones. I remember when George Floyd was killed and there were riots in the streets. There was one in my city. I didn't get it. And it boiled down to I had no desire to learn about the significance of what was happening and what had happened, or even to learn what had happened to people of color in this country at all. It's white entitlement to be lazy and to feel right. That's what it is. So when they are presented with the facts and the information, they feel like they're being attacked, which isn't valid. But it really is. It's just white entitlement and the white desire to feel right. And also a huge component of it is white people having this after all we've done for you mentality, when all we've done is hurt the black community systematically. And then it just comes back to not wanting to even know or read what has happened to people of color in this country, because they feel like, and I felt like I didn't have to. I just felt like as a white person I was right. Like that's like honestly the truth of it. In my late 20s, my mid-20s, my late 20s, I started to seek information more and more and listen to black voices and read books and things like that. They have to want to learn it themselves. And the best way I heard someone put it is racism won't end until white people recognize it as a white problem.
White people, did you know that research shows we have less empathy? 2014 study from the National Academy of Sciences, 2017 study from the Social, Psychological and Personality Science, 2021 study from the Journal of Humanistic Psychology, 2023 study from Harvard that studied over 60,000 participants. All these studies demonstrated that white people feel less empathy, especially towards black people who are suffering. Even the well-meaning white people. As an academic, a lack of empathy is how we excuse harm, how medical bias happens, how police brutality gets minimized, how workplace abuse and gaslighting gets ignored. It prevents white people from changing the systems that are harming the black community. What can us white people do? 1, when you feel discomfort because of the suffering of other people, stop trying to come up with some bullshit excuses and learn how to sit with the discomfort and connect to it. 2, believe people when they tell you about their suffering instead of trying to minimize it or justify it. And 3, expose yourself to black storytelling. Not just trauma stories, but black stories of joy, of nuance, of complexity. Empathy deepens when everyone is humanized. There's no requirement to feel shame to grow empathy, but there is a requirement to feel something. And I think that's something as white people struggle with.
Okay, now, white people, white supremacists, have the guts of telling everybody else how immigrants are coming to Europe and they're taking their homes and they're taking their jobs and they're taking over their countries. But do they mind to tell us or to have this conversation and this discussion that Europe were the first to invade the entire world? And those immigrants are probably moving to Europe, moving to the UK, just to follow up on the resources they pillaged, stole, embezzled from other people's land and starched them and took them away and put them in their countries, leaving everybody else with nothing. They still continue in Africa today. They still continue through proxy means and directly to pillage, to steal, and just, to embezzle from Africa. And you see Africans living in droves, going to Europe, trying to follow up on all those privileges that have been stolen from their land without any compensation and are benefiting those people. You don't have the rights to question me when I come to your house to ask for what is rightfully mine that you in the first place stole. And they're telling us and so they're telling us about how other people are coming to their lands to take over their culture. They came to Africa. They went to Australia. They went to India. They went to North America. They went to South America and stole land, stole resources, keep stealing resources today. And in the worst case scenarios, stole the people, unalived populations, and grabbed the land and made them permanently theirs. That is exactly what is happening in America today. They are always just thumping on how America is their land, how Australia is less talked about. But you'd think those white Brits who came from the UK and sailed all the way down to that country originally belong there. Those are just white British men from the UK, but they probably want to make it look like they belong to the Australian continent, but they don't. They don't tell us the stories of the Aboriginals. They don't tell us about the stories of the native Indian Americans in North America, in Central and South America. They don't tell us about that, but they claim they belong to Australia. Now, if Africans were getting fair compensation for their resources, because Africa is probably the richest continent, why would Africans leave this continent? Why would Africans leave their homes to go elsewhere to look for a better? What else would be a better life if you're getting compensation for all the natural resources and minerals in Africa? Who else would leave all that wealth to go anywhere else? But they don't, and that is what they follow up right in those continents, right in Europe, and try to pursue the same in the Americas or in the American continent. Now, you find some of those white British and those white supremacists from Britain talking about how immigrants are coming to take over their jobs. Those are lazy people. Lazy because in the first place, even in the job places, white people already have an upper hand. They already, just because of the color of their skins, they are very likely to get employment, to get absorbed into the job market in America, in Europe, over and above any other black people and any other people of color. But if you're lazy enough, with all the opportunities, you're still not going to get any help. So it is a big lie that they don't have jobs because, say, African people and Asians are coming to take over their jobs. No, they are lazy. They can't do anything to sustain the economies, and so hardworking people who have all along been disenfranchised are coming over, and they are willing to work to break their backs. In America, for example, how many times is a white person with the same qualifications likely going to get a job over a black person with the same qualifications? If you have to be overqualified as an African migrant in the US, or even a black, just an African American, overqualified to get the same job an undergraduate or a recent white graduate would get in America. And what is so funny, they're talking about gang violence increasing because of white immigrants. Are they willing to tell us about the massacres that took place in Africa during colonization? Are they willing to tell us about that? Let alone gang violence. How much is gang violence? And no, there is no point. I'm not trying to justify violence in any way, but can that even be comparable to how they mistreated people in Africa during and after colonialism? Can that match even as the smallest percentage of what black people went through during the transatlantic slave trade, and even to date? So what are you trying to tell us? They are coming to take over our schools. They are coming to take over our homes and our jobs because you're lazy, and because in the very first place, white people have never been a majority in the world. But because they are so privileged, they feel entitled. They want to make it look like white is the default. They always are supposed to be ahead in anything. And that is false. And that is why I'd probably say, no, none of us black people should be relying on mainstream media in this time and age to get the truth. Why? Because mainstream media is a proxy of white supremacy. They control it. They own the media. And that is why they always peddle lies and hide the truth. Today, with the presence of social media and the internet, we can dig by ourselves into history and tell the truth from the lies. Talking about this issue of white entitlement. So, in their defense, shamelessly, in their defense, you'd hear white people say, they even try to justify slavery and colonization, that we were civilizing the world. You have the gut to say you massacred hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Africans. Millions of Africans, because you're civilizing them. Under whose request are you doing that? Who requested for your civilization? We were civilizing the world. We build this country. We belong to Australia. I've had white people in Australia say, we are the Australians because we build Australia. Who asked you to build Australia? You'd have left it to the Aboriginals. If they were not willing, can you go and build Europe and the UK and leave other people's places alone? If Africans were not willing to ever develop Africa, let it be, and so be it. Who asked you to develop America? And in fact, the development in the West, in America, in Europe, is based on forced labor, slavery, plunder of African resources. So all of that cannot even be justified in the very first place. Wake up, black people especially, and wake up, people of color. We build the country, we build this region. Who requested for your help? You should have left it. Why would you come and build my house and claim that it is yours without my in fact, force yourself onto my house, develop my house? No, purport to have developed my house, and now you're trying to force to look at what is happening in South Africa. In South Africa today, we have white-only regions, white-only estates, white-only schools, and white-only businesses, like Orania, for example. It's a white-only settlement. And you have the guts to come and tell us someone else is coming to take over your land. Your culture is being toppled. Your schools, you're becoming a minority in your own land. You came to our lands, stole and did everything, stole our land. And now when we fight back, you're acting defensive and acting like the victim. You're not a victim. You're not a victim. You are the thief, and we are just fighting back. Now, not all white people are racist. I am colorblind. I treat people the same. If you hear white people say the same, run away from those people. Those are white supremacists. Straight forward white people are people that are willing to come out, accept that in one way or the other they are beneficiaries of white privilege, and that this whole concept, even though they might have not been part of it from the very beginning, even though you might say, I don't own slaves, I don't believe in slavery. First of all, accept that through your ancestors, you have partaken or have benefited from disenfranchisement of other people. Accept that it exists, and accept that it's a mess of your ancestors and that it needs to be cleaned up. And because your ancestors are not here, you, as their descendant, need to take over that responsibility and clean up the mess. So if you say, I treat all people the same, if we say Black Lives Matter, and you come out to say also White Lives Matter, see, that is privilege. That is not privilege, entitlement. We say Black Lives Matter because we are trying to bring to the attention of the world that which has been forgotten. Whites have not been forgotten anywhere. They own this world, technically. They control this world. And because we think that all lives matter, so that has been forgotten. Black lives need to be elevated and told to everybody. So you trying to tell us that white lives also matter is total bull crap and trash. Now, another thing I have noted is reverse racism. Ain't nothing like, there's nothing, no concept like reverse racism. We are also being targeted, or our lands being taken. Which land? You came to Africa and stole all the land. And now you're running to America, the Afrikaners who are running to America because South Africa have only suggested that they need to take back idle land that was stolen by the white supremacists, the fathers of apartheid. And we need to give back that land. And now, because you don't want to give what rightfully belongs to the South Africans, and you think you're being targeted, there's nothing like reverse racism. Reverse racism is trying to tell us somebody should not retaliate. What they try to term as reverse racism is a reaction of an action they earlier have done. When you oppress me and I try to fight back, and you're calling it counter oppression. No, it's not counter oppression. I'm just saying stop your chalk on me. Stop stepping on my feet. Now, something else is historical revisionism. Yeah, I wanted to also point out on historical revisionism. When we talk about historical revisionism or revising history, they try to make colonization and especially slavery look like it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a big evil, and trying to sanitize history. And that's very, very wrong in the first place. If you're really willing to make things right, accept for the healing of everybody, accept that so and so has been oppressed, has been disenfranchised for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And I have directly or indirectly partaken in oppression. So from then we can come to the table and agree on how we can talk about reparations, apologies, meaningful apologies. But the first thing is acceptance that you indirectly or directly have partaken in the oppression of other people, in the embezzlement of other people, in the plunder and pillaging of African resources. If you're not willing to accept that, then we're not really, there's nothing to talk about. And not just accept that your ancestors have mistreated my ancestors, and that they formed systems in which they continue to take effect today that privilege you and that disenfranchise me. You have to first of all accept that and stop treating people of color the same way your ancestors treated my ancestors, without which you're not ready to take to be accountable, to be responsible, to clean up the mess. And stop lying to people of color that you come to America, if you work hard in America, you'll be as successful as anybody else. Sorry, the myth of meritocracy is false and is one way in which white supremacists blindfold everybody to think that it is possible to be like them while serving them. Because when you are already miles ahead of me in the same race, and you're running the same race on a motorbike and I'm running barefoot, I will never catch up with you. So merit and meritocracy in places like America is false. You can't work hard enough in America to just rise up the ranks and take the place. In fact, it is practically impossible unless you're willing to work close to the white power structure. And then that is when you can have minimal chances, and I say minimal chances, of ever matching up to just some of the white people. Yeah, that is what I had for you in this video. Go ahead and share your sentiments, your thoughts about this right in the comment section below. If you have liked this video, then give it a thumbs up. Share this video far and wide, and please subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel. Until next time, I would be happy to see you in the next video. One love. Peace out.